Okay, so it's about 7 or 8 minutes later, and it's about time to turn it again. But I want you to notice the foamy butter. Look at how it's like foaming all over. What that is, that's the milk fats that are coming to the top. And by the time this chicken is completely done, all of the milk fats will be absorbed into the crust. And the milk fats is what causes butter to burn, which is why you cannot cook at a high temperature with butter. But once you have no milk fat at all, it actually can cook at a much higher temperature. And when I cook this chicken, the foaminess after a while will go away. It's absorbed into the crust. And so then at that point, there's no longer really too much of a danger of burning it. I mean, you don't want to cook it forever, and you don't want to turn up the heat too high, but you don't have to cook it so low like I'm doing now. Also, I turn the pan to the other side so that the hot spot, like Lydia talks about, each pan has a hot spot, and so I want to kind of evenly cook the chicken everywhere, so I turn the pan. But now I'm going to turn it over again. And another thing I like to do is to scrape these solid milk fats back into the pan so that they can absorb into the crust of the chicken. But in some spots you may be able to notice that the chicken is actually bubbling on top a little bit. And what that signifies is that it's actually cooking all the way through. If you see any bubbling on the top of it when you're pan frying, that means that you're cooking from top to bottom, which is what you want. Okay, so I'm going to turn the pan again, and I'm going to turn the chicken once again back to the original side that we started frying on. And at this point, now that we have formed a good solid crust on both sides, you're not as worried about messing up the crust. Whereas the first time, if you cooked it, if you flipped it too soon, your crust would just fall right apart. It would be too soft, which would be bad. But now that we've got a good crust on both sides, it's not as much of an issue. But you still don't want to you do not want to be turning it all the time. You are only going to turn this chicken a total of 4 times. 2 times on each side. Okay, we're going to scrape down the foamy milk solids, or milk fat I should say. Get the pan squarely on the burner here. And notice some of the foaming is already starting to subside. So most of the milk fat has now been absorbed up into the crust. And our temperature is remaining at 3. At no time do we want to turn this higher. I mean, I did a little bit at first when I first started putting the chicken in because the chicken was cold, and it cools down the butter when you put all that chicken in there. But once it starts to bubble back up again, you want to turn it back down to a low temperature and just keep it at that same temperature throughout the entire process. Because if you overcook it, first it will burn, but also it will dry out and get hard. And you don't want hard chicken. You want succulent, moist, juicy, tender chicken on the inside and a nice crunchy crust on the outside. But this works perfect for whether you're doing this with boneless, skinless chicken breasts or thighs. I just like dark meat better than white meat, but I've done it with breasts as well, and it's delicious either way. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop this segment, and the next segment is going to be right when it's ready to plate.